These set of photographs will help you to visualize the scene for our next example. It represents a mock officer-involved shooting scene, and the photos are of the building only. The evidence is long gone, as well as the vehicles. This example is going to cover both a 2D and then a 3D drawing. It's meant to simulate an officer-involved shooting. We have the evidence markers that are in place here. Those were not scanned, they were placed into the scene manually. We have the physical evidence, which is a blood trail and then a pool of blood. We have the outline of the building, the parking lot itself. These three vehicles were there at the time the scene was scanned, and the roadway. Again, it's just a very simple drawing, 2D top-down view to represent the crime scene. These lines here represent the trajectory of shots that were fired at the scene. Let's take a look at the point cloud. Here we used a conversion utility to convert 4 scans into one PCG, or a point cloud group. You can see the number of points in this. I think it's 75 million, and we're using the colors from the scanner. This was a daytime scan, so the colors from the scanner are very good on this. We're currently only displaying 286,000 points. We're going to zoom in and force the point cloud to reload here, and you'll see the scene come to life. If you remember from the photographs, there is a building. We had no vehicles in place at the time the photos were taken. There's the back side of the building where the blood trail was found, the entrance coming in from the street into the parking lot. And the police vehicle here. In the previous example, we had talked about using some of the tools available, which is a cutting cube. We're going to use that to isolate this vehicle. It has some trajectory rods coming out of the window, but they're difficult to see. Let's turn this on. My settings are saved from the time that I drew this, so I'm going to find them here. It's called Crown Vic for the Ford police vehicle. I'm going to load my cutting cube here and show you what it looks like before it's applied. Basically, the cube surrounds the vehicle, isolating it. Once it's drawn in, I can manipulate it, moving it up and down, expand it in the Z direction, move it on the horizontal plane here. And let me reload the one that I had previously saved there, and I'm going to apply it here. You see how the Crown Vic, the police vehicle here, is isolated. All of the other point cloud data is virtually gone. It allows us to focus on the vehicle itself here. These are the 3 trajectory rods that were placed into the window. So what we're going to do is use our pencil here and draw a line to represent each of the rods. And I'm only picking on that portion of the point cloud that is visible. And I'm familiar with the scene, so it makes it a little easier for me to pick out where the trajectory rods were. Along this rod here, we have the top of the rod that has a clean line, and there was some shadowing underneath it, but I know that the top line is a good line. So my 3 lines are drawn in. I'm going to go into the view mode, rotate the scene around to verify that they're put in place properly, that I didn't snap to a wrong point. Get a top-down view. Toggle that off, and I'm going to go into my scene here and look at the 3 rods that I drew. I'm going to color them so that they stand out for the example here. Change these to red. I want to find out what direction they came from. So I'm going to use the Modify Edit Length feature here. I want to change the total length of these rods to approximately 50 feet. That should give me a pretty good representation. So I'm going to type in the number 50, enter. It asks me to select the line that I want to extend out to 50 feet. And there you go. That's just a basic drawing tool that we're using there. So those 3 trajectories are extended out. I'm going to bring the line work in that I drew in. And it looks pretty good. I also have a cutting cube for the Toyota that I'm going to load in. And then apply. That's going to isolate the Toyota for me. This had 2 trajectory rods that were coming from the direction of the officer into the back window and the roof line of the Toyota. I'm going to force it to reload here to see if I can get a better visualization of the data, and I can't. It's pretty much to the max there. I'm going to draw the 2 lines on the trajectory rods, again, to what I can see. Rotate around, make sure they line up properly, which they do. Go back to my drawing, and I color these green. Again, these are just basic drawing skills that we're using here. I want to edit these as well. My default from the first time that I edited the length is set to 50, so I'm going to accept that. Select the end of the line that I want to extend back in the opposite direction 50 feet. And there we have it. So those represent the trajectories fired at the officer's vehicle and the officer returning fire. Again, we have 5 rods out there, but we have many more casings, which indicates that we have some bullet strikes that we couldn't find, in other words. We're going to look at the data inside the point cloud here, and I'm happy with the way it's turned out. So what I'm going to do here, since I already have my trajectory lines in, is I'm going to delete these that I drew in for the demonstration. I'm going to go back and turn on the layer that had the original trajectory lines. And I've done this exercise several times, and those trajectory rods were placed pretty well, and the extension lines that come out line up almost on top of each other every time. So this scenario seems to match the officer's story, that the suspect got out and fired at him, and the officer in turn returned fire. Suspect fled, firing as he fled, and the officer ended up hitting the suspect several times. The suspect ran around the corner, and that's where he was found. This is the 3D view of the scene here. The scene lends itself well to a 3D modeling or 3D analysis, in that you have the trajectory rods, you have the building. It allows you to take a look at line of sight issues, if there were any, for this particular scene, and you could place witnesses at the scene, and if there were any, to determine what they could and couldn't see. But what you're looking at here is the line work for what's called a surfaced scene. The vehicles that I have here are 3D models that I located and brought into the scene. The curved lines here. And again, it looks like a wireframe until you render the view, which applies the colors. So we have the gray parking lot there. We're going to get a 3D view of the scene there, and we have the building, windows, the 2 vehicles, the trajectory lines. Taking a look underneath to make sure that the vehicles aren't extending below the surface there, but the trajectory lines. So they're indicative of the officer's statement. And again, there were no witnesses there to corroborate or contradict what the officer said, and certainly the suspect didn't have anything to say in this case here. Okay, so let's put this back into the top-down view. And I'm going to bring in my point cloud, and it's the same point cloud that I used before. Nothing's changed at all. Just that we used the some of the tools to be able to draw the walls. And instead of using just a top-down view, it's going to be a 3D view. So let's look at the reference plane here. I have three that I used. One was the ground plane. I'm going to load that since I had already saved it. And that's a good idea for you to save your planes, save any cutting cubes that you've created in case you need to go back and do some editing. Alright, so we have the reference plane on there that represents the ground plane of the building, in essence, and the parking lot. So it's shown in green here. I also have a plane that I placed on the vertical wall that we're going to take a look at here. Let me load it in, and you can see it in green there. Let's take a look at it in solid color, and it'll give you a better idea. So this allowed me to draw the line work onto the wall using the snapping on plane option. So all of my line work that was drawn to represent the wall here of the building was done using that reference plane in that setting, and this is the reference plane for the rear wall. So again, using manipulators, you can move the plane in and out. Up and down if you had to, and realign it. So let's turn off the manipulators and show the grid only. There's the on-plane setting that I used, and that made sure that any line work that I was drawing was on that plane itself there. So if I toggle it to the top-down view, the top-down view now is on the last plane that I had identified, which was the rear wall. If I activate the ground plane, load that, and turn it off, and I go into a top-down view, my top-down view is now on the parking lot surface there. Okay, what I've done is I've brought in my line work from the scene, and this is from the 3D scene that I created. So you can see that the vehicle symbols are going to come in. I'm going to refresh it, reload the points here. Rotate it around a bit. So you can see that that model, that Ford Crown Vic model, which basically they're all the same, very slight changes from year to year, fits fairly well. I'm going to toggle off the point cloud and the line work and inspect it to see how well it lines up. The Toyota that I had here, I could not find the exact year. I found something similar though, but as far as the rear dimensions, it fits fairly well in this, and it certainly allows us to visualize what the officer saw, where the rounds struck. And again, we go into a top-down view. I'm going to turn this off here, and that's going to end the demonstration for the 3D scene.